we're joined by Rick Grenell. We're going to discuss a few topics with Rick. Rick, we just came off of about a half hour, 35-minute conversation about sort of the weekend that was in terms of celebrities in Hollywood finally turning their attention to anti-Semitism. And of course, that catalyst being not the 2,000 hate crimes against Jews, not the squad spewing racist rhetoric or anti-Semitic rhetoric over and over for years and years. It was that Kanye said some things. There were 3 protesters, and they want to boycott Adidas. And when I look at that, and I look at it on a grand picture, and you think about what's happened the last few years, that now all of a sudden it's the cool thing over the weekend for the response. It does. You're in California. It does make me curious. Obviously, I'm not supporting the words of Kanye. I'm not supporting the work of whatever Adidas does or doesn't do. And frankly, it's such a minute problem in terms of the big picture of Israel and anti-Semitism and everything. But really, and I'm sure you have seen it, we've all experienced it. That's why the ACLJ has been here. This has been something that the not the fringe right. I mean, yes, there's been some fringe right. Certainly have said some things that are not great. But this is something the mainstream left has been pushing now for years. So why are all of a sudden Hollywood surprised?
Yeah, I mean, if your point is there's hypocrisy in Hollywood, we all know that to be true. And the BDS movement has been a huge problem. Anti-Semitism has been on the rise. Really, attacks on religious liberty have been on the rise. And a lot of this stems from just the woke culture of, demanding that everybody think alike. And we've seen this in Europe. I can't not talk about this subject without talking about what happened in Europe. Right. Really, replacement of religion, Christianity, Judaism, all of the religious push and religious beliefs were really replaced by the government and secularism in Europe. There's a mocking of anyone who is religious in Europe. We don't want to go down that road. We have a First Amendment that guarantees us the absolute right to speak out and to have any religion that we want and to be able to embrace any religion that we want. I'm fearful that the cool kids crowd, the big tech, universities, Hollywood, the media, are all beginning to go down that road of Europeans, where we begin to mock anyone who's religious, and that's terrible.
Yeah, I agree with that. And look, we're going to move on from that topic. We've talked about it for 40 minutes now. Folks, you know my feelings towards it. There's a lot going on in the world. We're 2 weeks away from election, Will, and there's a lot of other stuff happening.
Yeah, Rick, there was kind of a bizarre show at the end of the Communist Party Congress in China that just ended, which led to the third consecutive term of Xi Jinping. But at the close of the ceremony, all of a sudden, someone approached the former president, who was the predecessor of Xi Jinping, and led him out of the room. And he was at the front near Xi, and it just kind of created this whole spectacle. What's your take on that, and what is being projected when something like this happens?
Look, there is a cleaning of the house, so to speak, that it's my way or the highway that's happening in the Communist Party of China. No one should be surprised. But to have Hu Jintao completely escorted out, embarrassing as it might be, was also a real big symbol for President Xi. He wanted to show that he is in charge and that there should be and could be no dissent. And that's what is the scary part about this, is the idea that you have governments that crush dissent. I'm very fearful that our government, the Biden administration, Democrats are beginning to go down this road. And it's a very scary thing to think about. But just look no further than January 6th in an investigative committee of Congress. You cannot get more serious and more effective than an investigative committee of members of Congress. But this January 6th committee did not have a single dissenting voice. Every single person agreed with exactly the outcome and the research and how this should be conducted. And that to me is scary. It's Chinese, communist Chinese tactics to think that you're going to have an investigative committee without a dissenting voice. That's un-American, and I get nervous when I see things like this.
Another angle out of that show in China was the lack of response from both the State Department, the ambassador to China. You see a show of power by the current leader of China, both embarrassing and making a big statement for the world to see as they escorted his predecessor out. And there's crickets from the United States. What's your concern from our State Department and our diplomacy? What is that showing to China if we have no response to some sort of authoritarian move like we saw?
Yeah, when you bend to somebody like Xi and you don't call him out, you really teach him that the United States is not going to stand up or be in the way of any of his other bad decisions. And, we got to call out our current U.S. ambassador, Nick Burns. He's a career guy who left the State Department to go to Harvard. He couldn't be more woke. He's completely failed at every job he's ever had. He wants consensus with the Europeans above what's best for America. He rejects this kind of America first mentality. He's mocked anyone who's been a tough diplomat. His beliefs are that diplomats should actually be dining at fancy restaurants and, talking about the other country. He doesn't ever defend America. He's unwilling to create a point where he sticks up for America. And look at this case. He's tweeting about the Celtics, the Boston Celtics. He's from Boston. So he's tweeting about his hometown rather than tweeting about what he just saw unfold in the country where he's supposed to be representing American values. He's totally failed to represent American values.
Well, that does kind of shift us a little bit, and I want to talk to you while we still have you about what's going on. We're obviously 2 weeks away now from the midterms. And a little bit of different outlook than we saw a few weeks ago. We've seen maybe the Republicans and the conservatives have a bit of a surge, maybe in the polls. Obviously, polls are what they are. But do you think the Democrats think they peaked too early? Do you think that this are good signs ahead?
Look, I have a little bit of a different perspective on this because I don't think that the Republican red wave was ever in doubt. I think the media tried to crush it. They tried to talk about the Democrats surging or all of this stuff. I just don't believe that people change their opinion so fast. I mean, if you watch what the media says of what people are doing and saying, you'd think we're all just wishy-washy going back and forth. I don't believe that. I think the red wave was always coming. I think it was always going to be huge. And now we just see the media scrambling to kind of pretend like, oh yeah, now there's a surge, and they're trying to give a reason why on the day after the election that there will absolutely be a huge Republican red wave surge. But everybody should get out and vote and participate in that surge.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. Obviously, this is a pretty interesting midterm season. You have the Western states actually having some difference. You're seeing the more conservatives are on the rise there, and that's happening. And I don't know. I'm excited to kind of just see how things shape up. I think you're right. There was a big talk maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, even for President Biden, where I felt like they were like, we're putting on the cool glasses again. We're going to say this guy's got it. He's back at it. He is going to be our candidate in 2 years. And then all of a sudden in the last week, like even the NBC News pieces are coming out being like, maybe we need to rethink that once again. We are seeing the media have to scramble when you see states like, again, some of the Western states having this kind of response.
When you're talking about wins in Oregon and Washington and California, it's a big red wave coming. So get out and vote and participate. Go ride this wave.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Rick, I appreciate you coming on and talking about all these issues. It is going to be an interesting few weeks. I can't wait to hear from you more. And obviously, Rick is out, making the rounds everywhere, but he's obviously got great stuff happening also in the state of California. We talk about this all the time. I'm one of those people who doesn't just write off these states, doesn't write off something, a wonderful state like California that sure has been overtaken by really horrible policies. And there are people like you, Rick, though, that are out there that are not just writing off parts of the country that actually do want to fix what's happening in California.
Yeah, there's no question. I will tell you this. We are currently up to registering 11,000 conservatives a month in California through fixcalifornia.com. it is really going well. Our donors have stepped up. Think about that. 11,000 new conservatives every month.
That's wild. So those are just people who just thought it was a lost cause, I guess, and now hopefully see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. They can't take what's happening to their state. So thank you, Rick, for doing that. Thank you for being a part of the ACLJ team.